Hello everyone, welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host Paula Taylor and this is episode 103. So we're going on quite a ride tonight, stick around, but I do have a couple of quick announcements and one of them is one that I know some people have been waiting for. So I just want to mention I did my very first sound bath at Brightway Wellness here in Tucson last night and it was amazing. We had a great turnout and it was a really... what I try to get across to people is that this is a collaborative thing. And so you just being at the sound bath informs how the sound bath goes. It informs the sounds that come out, the way that the energy moves. And so we had a really amazing group. And one of the things that came up at the end when we were kind of processing afterwards was that a few people said that they would have liked to have been able to move around, to actually kind of do some free form movement. And that's another reason I love doing this work and being collaborative is because that's not something I ever thought about. But as soon as the idea was brought up, 3 or 4 people, including me, were like, that's an amazing idea. So my next sound bath is at BioTouch Healing in Midtown Tucson. Actually, that's not my next one. My next in-person sound bath is August 7th. It's at BioTouch Healing in Midtown Tucson from 2 to 3:30. And I invite you to come if you're interested in doing some movement because that is the space where we have room to do that. And I'm very open to that. I think we can create kind of an environment where people can move if they want and people can be still if they want and there's enough space for that to happen. So if you're interested in that, let's do it. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. I'm excited to see how that develops. So that leads me to my second big announcement. I've been saying for a long time that virtual sound baths are coming, and I am doing my first virtual sound bath on this show next week at 7 p.m. on Pacific time, right here on Facebook Live, as my 2-year anniversary celebration. It'll be it's not technically the date 2 year, but it's episode 104, so it's essentially 2 years of Wind Down Wednesdays, and so that's completely free. It will be a full sound bath. So it will be about probably 30 to 40 minutes of sound with a little bit of talking before and after to kind of guide you in and out. We're not going to talk about a topic next week because the celebration is the sound. So I encourage you to join me, bring some friends, and it's a little bit of a test to see how the sound goes because my intention is to start doing virtual sound baths on Zoom. So this is a little bit of a test, and then the virtual sound baths on Zoom hopefully will be coming shortly after, about once a month. So there'll be 3 opportunities a month. If you're not in Tucson, you'll still have that one opportunity. And the great thing about energy, I talk about this a lot on the show, is that it doesn't matter where you are. It transcends time and space, sound and energy. So yes, it's nice to be in the room and kind of, hear the vibration of the bowls, but the energy of the bowls, that vibration is coming through whether you're on a speaker, whether you're 3,000, 10,000 miles away, whether you're in the room with me, you're still getting that benefit of that energy movement. Okay, so we're going on an adventure tonight. Stick with me. We are going to talk about trauma healing. We did a whole long series on trauma-based fears. I don't know if this is going to turn into a series, but it may. And why talk about trauma-based fears if we're not going to talk about some of the ways we can heal them, right? So we're going to talk about creating boundaries, which for people who have gone through trauma is sometimes nearly impossible because one of the hallmarks of trauma is a lot of times being raised in a situation where there were no healthy boundaries. They were not modeled for you. You were not allowed to develop healthy boundaries, physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, mental boundaries. And so as an adult, you carry that with you. And also a hallmark of trauma is that as an adult, if you do start to heal your trauma and start to create boundaries, sometimes that doesn't go well with the people in your family or the people that you were close to when you started your healing process, because they don't really know how to make boundaries either. They don't know how to make healthy boundaries. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in the weirdest way. I was going to say the weirdest way imaginable, but I don't know. One person's weird is another person's awesome. So I'm going to stick with awesome instead of weird. So let me tell you, I'm going to go into a lot of detail here. And part of the reason I'm doing that is because we talk so often about this process. This is a spiritual excavation process. This is a spiritual integration process. This is a healing process that we are doing together on this show, in these episodes, in these meditations. And this is what I do when I work with people one-on-one. And I like to talk about my process to kind of show you how these things can work and how important these little steps are that sometimes don't seem important at the time, but then they lead to this big revelation. So my husband and I bought a house in Mexico. I talked about that a couple weeks ago. I took a couple weeks off, and we got back and both kind of came down with a little bit of like a stomach yuck thing. And he sort of bounced back right away and was doing fine. And I was just like not doing well. I was kind of laying prone for a few days. But also I've been having a really bad flare up of my endometriosis, which, it's all kind of in that same area. I've been having a lot of pain and some bleeding, to the point where I was like, okay, maybe I need to think about having another surgery, which is always my sort of last resort option. So I was feeling kind of funky. I talked before I left for Mexico about how I was feeling a little bit discouraged and a little bit just kind of, I wasn't feeling great about things. I had some self-worth issues coming back up. I talked about that in the last few episodes. And so I was hoping I would kind of go to Mexico and it would like reset me, and then I would come back and be like, yay, everything's great and let's keep going. And that's not really what happened, because I didn't actually do any real work. I didn't do any of the excavation while I was there. I was kind of a rest, and rest is important. We've talked about that. So I got back. I wasn't feeling good physically, especially. I was feeling really pretty terrible. And then I got really discouraged, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I need to do something in terms of some sort of practice, but nothing was coming to me. And so I went back and I listened to the episode on burnout of Wind Down Wednesday, which was almost exactly a year ago. It was right after I did the 1 year anniversary. I think the very next episode was on burnout. And it's always funny when I go back and listen to these, especially, depending on the space I'm in. I was like, 1 year ago, Paula, you knew exactly where you were going to be in another year. I was like, this is an interesting cycle that seems to come up every July for some reason. I was having a flare-up of my endometriosis. I was having a lot of pain. I was feeling really discouraged and struggling with my self-worth. And part of that episode was talking about how underneath burnout is something else going on. And in my case, it was these issues of self-worth. And so I listened to that. I did the meditation. I listened to the next episode on holding negativity in the body. I did that meditation. And then I got even more discouraged, because I was like, it's been a year. I'm in the same place. I'm in the same place I was a year ago. I'm having like the endometriosis. Now, I was completely disregarding the fact that after I did that work, I had a whole year where the endometriosis was really not bothering me. I was completely not in the space of noticing that, of course, because I was kind of not feeling good and feeling kind of down and discouraged. So I was like, well, I don't know. But one of the things I said in the burnout episode was that when you get to the end of your tools, it's time to try something that you don't normally do. It's time to try something new, something old, something you haven't done in a while in terms of your practice, in terms of your excavation and your spiritual practice. So coincidentally, or maybe not, I had ordered a new set of oracle cards right before I left Mexico, and they came during this period where I was kind of like, I'm dying. And I meant to show them. They're right over there, but they will be around a lot. And if you are doing any sound baths, they will be there, because they hold the frequency of dimensional frequency expansion of the light language. They hold that energy of the light language. And so much more, which I'm going to get into. But so I bought these cards, and they're called Working Your Light Oracle cards. They're Rebecca Campbell is the writer, and I bought them because the art it really drew me in. The art resonated with me, and I do cards a lot. We've done cards on the show, so you might say like, well, cards, that's not a new tool for you. Well, they were a completely different deck of cards, and each deck holds a different energy. That's why when you see people reading, a lot of times they've got, 25 different decks, because depending on the reading or the person they're reading for, there's a certain energy calling to them. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna work with these cards. I'm gonna do this reading, and to get to know the cards, I was like, I'm gonna do one of the readings that's suggested in the book. And there was it was an 11 card reading, pretty extensive reading about a lot of different things, what's going on in your life, what's going well, what's not, what your life path is. It was a pretty extensive reading. And so I started pulling cards, and just placing them. And I thought, all right, I'm just going to place each card and kind of look at it, and then I'll go back and like read the book. And as I was pulling these cards and placing them on the table, a couple things happened. The first thing is that every single card was like spot on. Like I pulled, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a few of the cards I pulled that kind of go into tonight's episode. But so I was like pulling cards and just like I was like, okay, clearly this deck is resonating with what I need to hear right now, with what I need to work on. But the other thing that happened has never happened to me before in quite this way. I have a lot of visions. Usually it's during a meditation, but when I work with people, I have visions all the time, or I have information come in, I have words or sounds or, images. So as I was turning cards, I actually started having this vision. And the first part of the vision was that these unicorns kind of walked in. And they're like, hey, and I was like, ooh, I love unicorns. Unicorns are awesome. I'm a girl. I was a little bit obsessed with unicorns as a kid, which I think a lot of girls were. And I still love unicorns. And so I was like, oh, hey, unicorns, this is cool. And then this gigantic dragon flew in. And I was a little less pleased about that. I was like, oh, what is this? Like, this is a big, scary dragon. And what is this doing here? And it was very vivid. And it was very powerful. And I get this feeling when I'm in a session and it's really powerful, I can feel kind of like the air almost feels electric. I've said it on the show, like, ooh, I got the energy in here is really intense tonight or something. I'll say something like that. So I could feel, and I had come from this place of just being like, literally I was not doing anything but like getting out of bed and going to the couch and then going back to bed. That's how kind of bad I had been feeling. So all of a sudden, like this energy was coming in and I started feeling kind of alive again. And I got really excited about these cards and I was pulling these cards and I went in and I read the book and kind of got really into it and sort of did some steps that seemed like they were being recommended. I went back and did the Calling Your Energy Home, which is amazing. It's a really great episode and a really great meditation. I recommend doing it periodically. That's a more recent episode. So a couple of the cards that I pulled a card that said dim your light, or you're dimming your light essentially. And the art on that card, I was actually going to pull these cards out and show them. But these cards will be around. You will be seeing them. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. But at the same time, I was like, I kind of pulled that card and I was like, well, no wonder my light's dim. Like, I feel like garbage. I feel like crap. This endometriosis thing is happening. Like, how can I have this bright light? How can I do this work I'm meant to do in the world if I feel physically like I can barely move? And I had a little bit of something else going on, but I could tell a lot of this was sort of energetic, and this endometriosis, which is kind of a lifelong thing, but has really been not bad. Like I said, for a year, it's actually been pretty good until it flared up again. And so then the unicorns came kind of forward in the vision. And they're like, well, we're here to heal your endometriosis. And I was like, say again? Like, I'm listening. That versus like surgery with a bowel specialist. Okay, unicorns, what do you have to say to me? And they started telling me that their horns can heal. And they asked me for permission for them to come energetically into my pelvis and work on my endometriosis. And they said, our unicorns can cut. Like they were talking about, they were showing me images of kind of breaking up adhesions and scar tissue. And then they were showing me images of actually like placing the horn to the areas of endometriosis, which is when endometrial tissue, which is supposed to grow in the lining of your uterus, grows outside your uterus, and it's very painful. So they were showing me that they were going to touch their horns to these various places, like on my bowel, which is partly why I don't want to have surgery, because like you don't want to mess with your bowel if you can avoid it. So they were showing me that they were gonna put their horns on these places, and they're like, can we just go in there and work? And this is a fairly frequent thing that happens to me. I work with the DFE beings. I have spirit guides, and and they'll sort of start on a process, and I just give them permission for the highest good always to do whatever it is they're meant to do. And I was excited about that. I was like, well, I don't know what you can really do, but I'm willing. And like, I don't know, that was Saturday. Today is Wednesday. And like 90% of my pain is gone, which is pretty amazing. I mean, I was at the point where I was having a hard time just even kind of getting off the couch. So, and again, I had a virus and I think that's clearing out, but there was a lot of like cramping and stuff that was going on that was not just intestinal, and that is like completely gone. completely gone, which is like a little bit mind-blowing. So then the other thing that happened, I pulled 2 other cards that said, one of them said protection, and it said something about calling your energy back. So I went ahead and did that meditation later that day, or maybe the next day. And then I pulled a card that said boundaries. And the boundaries card, we will look at it together sometime. I wish I had pulled it, but it's basically a woman like with her arms straight out to the side and all these hands kind of trying, you can see that they're trying to get in and they can't because she has boundaries. And so I pulled these cards and I was like, I mean, I'm doing the best I can. How can I get better? I don't really know. You know, I'm open to suggestion. And the dragon flew in and I was like, what are you doing here? And the dragon said, I'm here to help you with your protection and your boundaries. I'm here to help you create boundaries. And the dragon said, you need to be fierce. And I said, I don't want to be mean. I don't like that. I don't want to be mean. And the dragon said, you are confusing fierceness, which is born out of love, with anger, which is born out of fear. I'm going to say that again because it's pretty powerful, or it was for me. Fierceness is born out of love. Anger is born out of fear. So what's the difference? Because then what's the difference? Fierceness, anger, it all seems like this aggressiveness to me. Aggressiveness is something that is very scary to me. And as somebody who does have a history of trauma, I grew up with a dad who was really angry, and he was not physically abusive, but there was a lot of kind of yelling and anger and irritation. And I was very afraid of him. And I learned to kind of make myself small because of that. And I also learned to be very afraid whenever anybody showed any kind of sign of aggression, I back off. I don't do confrontation at all. And it's because of that fear of that trauma that happened. And I think that's a pretty common situation. I think our parents do the best they can, but as we've talked about before, there's these cycles of trauma and this generational trauma that just comes, I've never met his dad. His dad had died when he was fairly young, but I'm willing to bet he was pretty angry. Everybody in that family is a little bit explosive. So that is anger. And anger is born out of fear. Fierceness is born out of love. And a really good example of fierceness is any kind of social movement that you think about that brought about real change was born out of fierceness and love. So think like the civil rights movement in this country, or Gandhi getting independence for India. The people who fought for and still are fighting for rights for LGBTQ, women's suffrage. These kind of things might seem aggressive because they had to push to get things changed, to get rights. But this was born out of love. This was born out of this idea that everybody deserves to have the same rights that white men have, right? Which is, we're still dealing with. Apparently it's 2022 and it's still a thing. So the dragon kind of showed all of that to me. And I was like, okay, I'm listening. Like, I'm a little less scared by this, what I'm taking as aggression and you're explaining is this fierceness, because think about a dragon, flying around and shooting fire out of its mouth. So the dragon said, I'm going to start making rings of fire around you for protection, to make your boundaries energetically. And I'm also going to start shooting fire inside of you, because what happens in your physical body when you don't feel protected, when you're still kind of acting out of this traumatized state, is that your physical body tries to build protection. And so things like weight gain, things like some of this endometriosis and the scar tissue and these adhesions, the body is trying to create structure. Tension, absolutely, is formed out of protection. We call it armoring. That's the actual term we use in massage, is armoring. So you're armoring your muscles up. What is armor for? It's for protection. So the dragon said, I'm going to start burning away this protection your body's tried to make, because it's not working. It's just hurting you. That's why your body hurts. That's why you don't feel good. And then I'm going to start making this protection external to you, out in your energetic field. And I kind of said, well, but I mean, I want to be accessible to people. Like, I don't want to have a big wall up, because that's what happens to most of us. We try to build protection and we wall off our heart energetically, or we wall off our energetic field. So, it's like that idea of being passive aggressive. So you're passive, like you're just getting pummeled, right, energetically. And so you go, oh, and you put up this big wall and then nothing can get in. And I don't want to be that way. I want good things to come to me, right? And so the dragon said that the fire that the dragon shoots is that fierceness of love. It is that light of love, that unconditional love, that same golden light that I like to think of as this beautiful waterfall of joy, right? That sounds a lot less scary than dragon's fire, is the same love. It's fierceness versus that kind of gentle flow that we talk about. But it's the same raw material. So the dragon told me, when I shoot fire out and I protect you, that is made of love. So love can still come through. Love recognizes love, and love allows love through. And I have said for many years that love is all the protection that you need. And it's a little bit controversial in the energetic field to say that, because we are taught to build up this structure of protection. I know people who spend, every day they do some sort of a ritual where they're putting out these layers of light, to protect themselves. And my issue with that has always been that you have to maintain those. That takes energy from you to hold that out in space. And my argument has always been, if you are truly in the flow of unconditional love, you don't need any protection, because everything that comes into your field is going to get transmuted into love. But it turns out maybe I needed some help with that on a personal level. And I'm betting that a lot of you do too. So what I love about this practice is that this dragon, just like any other kind of spirit guide that you might connect with, is here to serve you, but it's not something that you control. It's not something you have to maintain. You want to communicate with your spirit guides. You want to make sure that you're on the same page. You want to I was going to say talk to them, because I think in words, so I'm saying talk, but you want to have a dialogue in whatever way that looks like. But I don't have to tell the dragon to do this. I just have to give the dragon permission. And whenever you're dealing with a spirit guide, if you say for the highest good, that places that's kind of like the dragon putting the fire out, for the highest good. Help me for the highest good. And the thing is, the more that I am helped, the more that you are helped, the more that we can help others. Because the people who are watching this show are people, I'm betting, who are a lot like me, who want to help, who want to do good in the world. And unfortunately, we are the people who tend to get kind of walked all over. We are the people that people call doormat, because we are nice. Because the first thing I said to the dragon, when the dragon said you need to be fierce, I don't want to be mean. But meanness comes out of fear. Meanness comes out of that sort of inferiority, self-worth stuff. Oh, I'm not worth as much as you, so I'm going to lash out at you. That's what meanness is. That comparative, transactional relationship that is not love. Fierceness is, I love you the same as I love myself. We are one, and you deserve good things. So sometimes fierceness, as I mentioned, is about standing up for others. But you can't stand up for others if you don't have the energy to do it, because you're not standing up for yourself. And I knew that was one of those things I kind of knew cerebrally, but I needed to integrate it. And that's the last thing I want to say. I could go on about this for a really long time, but I do want to get into the meditation, which is going to be really fun. So let's talk a little bit more about this trauma healing. And if you've watched the show much, I don't actually like the word healing. I like to talk about clarity, expansion, and harmony as the three parts of healing. But for time's sake, I'm just going to use the word healing. So when you're healing trauma, I've given this disclaimer in almost every trauma episode. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not a licensed mental health professional. And I highly encourage you to see someone. But I'm going to be a little bit more honest than I've been in the past about that. I'm going to tell you a little more of my truth, and you take or leave it as it resonates for you. I have a background in psychology. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was enrolled in a PsyD program for clinical psychology. I wanted to become a therapist, probably because my therapist and mentor, who changed my life so much. I wanted to help people. I've always known that I wanted to help people, and I thought that's how I was going to do it. But something felt like it was missing to me. And now, many years later, going through this journey, I can tell you what it is, and I can explain why I think this is the way it is. So it's very important to understand on a mental level trauma and how it was created and recognize the patterns. It's very important to do that, but it's not enough to heal it. You cannot heal trauma in the mental space alone. I just don't believe that you can. You can understand it, you can process it, you can kind of learn how changing your behavior will help. But until you shift the energetics in your body that are a result of that trauma, that were caused by that trauma, you cannot fully release the trauma. You cannot fully heal. It has to be a holistic process. It cannot be done in the mental space alone. And in fact, sometimes getting stuck in the mental space actually makes things worse. Now, please do not mistake that as me telling you not to do therapy. That is not what I am saying. What I am saying is that you need to do something in addition to therapy. You need to do the mental understanding of it. That's part of our excavation. If you think back to spiritual processing, which you can read about on my website, that's paulataylorenergy.com, there's 4 steps to spiritual processing. And the first one is awareness. That happens in the mental space. The second one is mental processing. That happens in the mental space. But the step that most of us are missing is that we have to process in the physical body. The emotions of trauma are stored in the physical body in the form of things that cause us pain, tension, discomfort, weight gain, and weight holding, which again, I'm not saying that's the only, please do not mistake me saying you need to be thin if you're going to let go of your trauma. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying in some cases, like in my case, in my belly, I can feel that there is trauma being held there. Does that mean I'm going to look like a supermodel if I let it all go? Probably not. But that can be a sign of, that can be where trauma is held. Trauma is held in the hips. It's held in the pelvis. It's held in that pelvic floor that gets so tight. It's held in it's held in the heart. My dad had heart problems and he was an angry person. That's held in the heart. So if we want to heal our trauma, we do have to understand it in the mental space. But then we have to learn how to process it through and out of the body. So in terms of boundaries, if you were raised in a traumatic situation or encountered trauma at some point in your life that affected you, it can happen anytime, it's not always childhood, then you probably struggle with boundaries. Your boundaries are either too rigid, you won't let anybody in, you won't let anybody get close to you, you're never going to get hurt again. That's one reaction to trauma. Or you don't have any boundaries and people are sort of just taking advantage of you and walking all over you. And they're both hard to change. It's hard to get rid of that rigidity, just as it's hard to start creating that space around yourself. And we do that through energy work. We do that through guided meditations that move energy. And that's I'm going a little bit long in my talking tonight, but I think this is important to note too. And I'm not sure I've ever said this specifically on the show before. When we do these meditations, they're a little bit of a mental exercise. But the goal of meditation is to surpass that mental space, is to get out of the mental space back into the body, which is where we receive the intuitive guidance that moves energy. So energy is moved in the body more than in the mental space, or in addition to in the mental space. Like, think about your mental space, think about your brain and your head. That is like, what, 1/10 of your body? So if that's the only place you're moving energy, you're missing a huge amount of healing that needs to happen. So we're going to move energy in the body, which I do through these meditations and through sound and through light language. And that's the last thing I better mention before we get into this meditation. So these meditations are really energy healing sessions. I call this a meditation podcast. I call it a guided meditation. It's a good short, it's kind of like healing. It's like a little shorthand for intense energy healing is what we're doing in these sessions. And they're powerful. I went back and listened to those, and they were powerful, especially the calling your energy home one. That was a really good energy healing session / meditation. So last thing I want to say before we jump into the meditation is that with my dragon, whose name is Litor, it's a little bit hard to say because it's not like in English, it's in dragon language. There is a dragon language. Just like I have introduced this idea of light language, and if you're familiar with this, you've probably seen people perhaps channeling this. There's a lot of this happening on TikTok. It's pretty cool if you look up light language or look up dragon language. So dragon language has come through, and it's going to come through in this meditation. So I just want to give a little bit of a disclaimer because it sounds a little bit intense. Dragon energy is intense, but remember, everything I do for the highest good, for your highest good, for my highest good, for the highest good of all. This fierceness is born out of love. So if it causes some triggering when you hear it, recognize that that's the triggering of the discomfort that I first had with my dragon. Oh, this feels like it might be aggressive. It's aggressive in that it's fierce love. It's like tough love they talk about in some of the 12-step programs. So this dragon language, it's a little bit intense. And my face looks a little bit funny when I do it, but it's so powerful. I mentioned that the unicorns worked on me and my pain went away within days. I feel like a different person. I did that sound bath yesterday and someone said, I see your dragon and it is immense. And I said, oh, he's huge. And he will like open his wings and command the room. And that is what I have been needing. The dimming of my light will no longer happen when I let that fierce light of love that my dragon holds for me come forward. And as I start to integrate that, I may need less help from my dragon. What we're going to do in the meditation tonight is to invite our dragon in to create some boundaries. I've been told that everybody has a dragon. Actually, I went to a conference with a lady who does dragon stuff. We were just eating lunch and she happened to be talking about it. She's like, everyone has a dragon at the table, but you, she pointed to me. And I realized now it was because I had my dragon blocked because I was afraid of that fierceness. Because it reminded me, it triggered the trauma in me of that anger that I felt growing up. That was so scary to me. But just remember, anger is born out of fear. Fierceness is born out of love. And you can feel the difference. If you trust your gut, you can feel the power, this beautiful, deep, fiery power that comes from this dragon that is the same as that beautiful, gentle light we invite in. It's just the intensity of it is different. Whew. So let's meditate together. So for this meditation, I encourage you to sit up if you are able. This is going to be a pretty active meditation. If you're not able or it doesn't feel good to you, then that's fine. If you'd like to lie down, you can do that. But I suggest you sit up, get yourself supported in whatever way feels comfortable. Take a few nice, deep, long breaths. You can sigh them out, that long, audible ha sound, just telling your body it's time to come out of fight, flight, or freeze and into the ease response. And then draw your energetic sanctuary to you. Bring it into the space that you're in right now. If you're not familiar with that practice, just imagine that you're sitting in the beautiful, safest space you can imagine. This is like paradise to you, whatever that looks like. And this is your special energetic space where you can do this healing work and know that you're completely safe and know that you're completely supported and know that you can ask anyone or anything to leave at any time. So if you invite your dragon into this space and it gets to be too much, if it's too intense, you can ask your dragon to leave. And your dragon will not hold that against you. If you're not ready for that, that's completely fine. But give it a chance. If you start feeling a little bit uncomfortable, just sit with that. If you start feeling like you're too triggered, then of course take care of yourself. So sit in your sanctuary here, look around, notice what you see, notice how you feel, notice how safe this is. For this meditation, I encourage you to be outside somewhere in your sanctuary, even if you're usually in a building. And look up at the sky, just kind of notice what it looks like. Maybe it's a completely different color than our sky. Notice if it's night or day. Notice that whatever is coming to you feels really good. It feels really safe. It feels really comforting. It feels like it's yours. This space is yours and yours alone. And as you're ready now, just keep looking at the sky, keep gazing into the distance. If you're not a visual person, then just imagine this. Just tell yourself the story. Listen to me telling you this story and set the intention that you're following along here, that things are happening energetically as I'm suggesting to you in this story. And notice now off in the distance here, you see a tiny little speck of something and you're like, oh, what is that? Off in the distance in the sky. And it starts to grow a little bit bigger. It starts to get closer. And after a while you realize, oh, this is my dragon. My dragon is coming to me. And invite your dragon in for the highest good, just like everything else in this space. Only the highest good can happen for you here. You are completely safe. So as your dragon approaches you, just set that intention for the highest good. I connect with my dragon for the highest good. And then notice, what does your dragon look like? What color is your dragon? Is your dragon big or is it small? Does it feel like it has a gender? Does it have a name? Maybe your dragon's already communicating to you, and that's great. Just let that come intuitively. But just notice your dragon's kind of getting closer and closer. Notice that this is a very safe experience, even if your dragon's really big, even if it seems like it's scary looking or it's shooting big flames out of its mouth. These are all made of love. The flames, the dragon, this is a fierceness love dragon to help you with your boundaries. So invite your dragon to land somewhere near you. Maybe not too near you. Maybe you're not ready to get up close and personal. Maybe you want your dragon to kind of hover a little bit off the ground. That's fine. But start to notice the details about your dragon here. Ask your dragon if it has a name. Ask your dragon what it's here for. Ask your dragon how it can help you with your boundaries. And recognize that this loving flame, this fierce flame of love, of unconditional love that your dragon is going to use to help your boundaries, works both ways. If your boundaries are rigid and you're having a hard time letting people in, that flame will help dissolve the rigidity of those boundaries and create these fluid boundaries that allow love in and out. If you're someone who feels like you don't have boundaries, or you don't have enough boundaries, or you have a hard time maintaining your boundaries, then the fire of this dragon is going to create that stability that you've been missing. Not rigidity, just stability, this flow, this fierce protection of love that allows only love in, that allows only the best for you, only the good, beautiful things that you deserve come through this beautiful, fierce dragon's fire. So as you're ready, we're going to check back in with our dragon at the end for messages. But allow your dragon to start flying around you and creating these beautiful rings of fire. Start with one that's really close to your body. Just let that dragon. And you might start feeling hot here. You might start feeling uncomfortable or triggered. That's okay. Take some nice deep breaths. If you need to back off, that's fine. If you need your dragon to just sit back down next to you, that's fine. You can take this as far as you'd like. Push yourself a little beyond your comfort zone, but if you're getting triggered and you need to stop and you need to step back, do that without judgment. And if none of this is coming to you at all right now, that's okay. You can come back to this. Just listen. Just let it come into your space. That energy is going to be beginning to shift just by hearing this, just by the energy that I'm moving with my words. So now let your dragon move a little bit further out from your body, making another ring. Essentially, your dragon's going to be making these concentric rings of fire leading out from your body, as far as you would like to let these go. Perhaps your dragon wants to bring some of this fire to the body itself, in the areas that you've been holding on to that need for protection, that you've been armoring against this energy that's coming in that hasn't been able to be stopped by these beautiful rings of fire love. And if you're in that rigid state, then energy is trapped inside, it's not getting out. So as these dissolve, if you've got rigid boundaries, perhaps you start to feel a little bit of looseness in your body, a little bit of that tension leaving the body. As you build this protection of these concentric rings outside, perhaps you feel yourself sitting a little bit taller. Perhaps you feel more supported in your body, in your space. Just notice how this feels. Give your dragon permission to come into the body and burn away anything there that you're holding on to that's no longer needed. Any false areas that you were trying to use for protection that are not serving you. Any energy there that's not serving you for protection. So now just stay in this process. Let the dragon keep making rings around you. Let the dragon move inside to whatever areas are calling for attention. Again, you can come out of this at any time if you need to. I'm going to bring in some of that really powerful dragon language just to help solidify the strength of these beautiful rings of that fierceness of love, of unconditional love that this dragon is bringing into your being now, into your energetic space, into your body. O ka sheneta yeso teka jesha. O tena yese shota. Kikachana sichuwata chitana she o. Kotena chetasa ekatatana shetatana shetatana kochena sheteaka cha cheteaka chata koche sachenatea. And then just spend a moment or two here asking your dragon if it has any messages for you. Perhaps you'd like to open a line of communication with your dragon so that you can do this again. You can come back and repeat this meditation to help you connect with that dragon's energy again. Or you can start to play with this on your own. This is a playful practice. This is a serious practice, but we can have fun with it. It has serious effects in a beautiful way, but the practice itself can be fun. Maybe your dragon wears a funny little hat. Maybe your dragon tells you jokes. Maybe your dragon's super serious, and even that seems a little bit funny because we're talking about dragons. Let this be playful. Let this be intuitive. Let this be a process that happens in the body, in the energetic space, in the imagination, which is that intuitive connection, not the mental space, not the rational mind. In the imagination, in the intuition, in that beautiful expanded space. Let your dragon create that beautiful protection that you deserve. Let it create those boundaries that you deserve. Fluid boundaries that allow love to pass through, but keep out fear. Spend the last few moments here communing with your dragon, or just enjoy your sanctuary. Just sit, enjoy the view. Notice if there's been any shifts here. Maybe you feel like you're sitting up a little taller. Maybe you feel that protection already. Maybe you feel fierce. Maybe you feel like you could unfurl your own wings and go out and make a difference in the world. That is what fierceness can do. That is why it is so important to invite this fierceness in. Fierceness is what changes the world. That fierceness of unconditional love. That fiery dragon's breath of unconditional love is how we change the world. Is how we change the way we've been showing up in the world. Take a nice deep breath in through your nose, sigh it out through your mouth. Maybe shrug your shoulders, move your head and neck around a little bit. Just reaffirming that you're still fully present in your body, even though we invited this beautiful energetic sanctuary to come into our space. Affirm with me out loud if you'd like. I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body and I embrace my dragon. I am fully present in my body and I deserve the fierceness of protection. I am fully present in my body and I recognize that protection is unconditional love. Take another few deep breaths if you'd like. Move around a little bit more. The truth of your identity is that you are protected, you are fierce, you are strong, you are worthy. Let yourself feel that fully on all levels of your being and know that it is true. Wiggle your fingers and toes, move your body around a little bit, and then as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had fun with this practice. I hope you continue to reach out and make this connection with your dragon and recognize that this can make a big difference. If you allow it, it will make a big difference for you as it has for me. Have a fierce rest of your evening and week. And I will see you next week for the 2-year celebration of Wind Down Wednesday with a full-length sound bath. I'll have all my bowls. I'll tone. It's going to be amazing. I hope you will join me then.